Hello enemies and book lovers, my name is Ash and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be about the books I have DNF'd. And this is going to be singular books I've DNF'd. If I did a video about all the book series I DNF'd, that would take me over an hour to do because I have 54 book series that I have DNF'd. So that is series I just decided not to continue, and that's too much for me. So this video, instead, we're going to be doing 20 books that I have DNF'd. I'm going to be trying doing this as quick as possible because I don't want to be talking 5 minutes about every single book and that video being a million hours long. I'm going to be doing this in no particular order. I'm probably not going to remember a lot of these things because I have horrible memory, but I'm going to be doing my best to tell you what or why I decided to DNF these books. Some of these are unpopular, some of these books no one's probably ever heard of, so we're going to see how this works out. So the first book is The Last Dragon, which is the second book in the Revenge of Magic series by James Riley. This book I recently DNF'd, and there wasn't really anything really wrong with it. I didn't hate it or anything. I just wasn't really interested in it. This is a middle grade series, and I'm not really a huge fan of middle grade books. I kind of just decided recently that maybe I should just try not to go near middle grade books because I am very bad at continuing them or enjoying them. So yeah, nothing really horrible about the series. I just decided not to continue it because middle grade is just not for me. It's not really my type of genre. Next is Where Dreams Descend. This is the first book in the Kingdom of Cards series, and it is by Janella Angelis. This book has a 3.69 rating, so it's actually rated pretty low, and I'm not really sure as to why for their reasoning, but for me, I was just kind of bored with it. I was reading this for a book club and I just didn't get very far. I DNF'd it at 21%, and honestly, I can't really tell you anything I read about it because I just didn't really care about this book. With a 3.82 rating, we have next Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. This is the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and we all know why I don't like this book. I did a whole rant review on it in my rep video, I think it was like a month or two ago, and yeah, I did not like it at all. This was problematic in my opinion. I think a lot of the books in this series are problematic, which is surprising considering it's so popular and a lot of people don't like some of the tropes that are used in these books that are seen as an issue. Obviously, if you like these books, that's fine, that's no big deal. It's just fantasy, it's fake, it's fiction, all good and dandy. I DNF'd this at 56% and it was just uncomfortable for me. I felt very uncomfortable. How many times do I have to say that? It was very much the female character being against any physical contact, but her body wanting it. It was very much like my brain says something that my body doesn't, and it just felt very uncomfortable for me. So I decided not to continue the series. I mean, I've heard more things that made it sound like the series is even worse, so I'm glad I stopped now. Although, like, a little tiny part of my brain's like, maybe you should try again. Will I hate read these books and do rant reviews about them all? Tempting, but I also don't want to get people upset. I'm introverted and get easily upset, so if I wanted to just trash a series that people liked, I think it would not be a good idea, but it's something I will consider because these books, there's a lot of good things about these books, and there's a few people that think it's funny, but then there's me. Anyway, let's just move on. Next is Odin's Child. This is the first book in the Raven Rings series. This is by Siri Petterson, and this was an ARC that I received from NetGalley. This was a translated work, and I barely read any of it because it was just so hard for me to grasp and understand. I DNF'd this within the first quarter of when I started it, and honestly I can't tell you anything of what I read. It was just really confusing for me. I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it, and a lot of this happens with ARCs on NetGalley. I kind of stepping away from ARCs from NetGalley just because I just have a hard time enjoying the books there and kind of getting into them. There are a few that I really liked, like Iron Widow. I actually got to read an ARC from Iron Widow, which was really cool, and I really enjoy that book. But usually though, I don't like a lot of ARCs on NetGalley. I don't know if that's just me, but I feel so guilty taking ARCs out and then just not liking them and DNFing them. It just feels so, it makes me feel guilty. So I didn't like it. I didn't really rate it. This has over 8,000 ratings and it has a 4.14, so it must just be me, maybe. Okay, this one is just embarrassing, and the fact that I have it on here, if you watch my videos and you are a fantasy lover and you don't like romance, I am so sorry that you have to witness this. This has a 4.50 rating and it has 234 ratings. 234 ratings. I've gotten 35% of the way into it, and this is The Rancher's Pregnant Fake Fiance, which is the first book in the Radforth Ranch Brothers series by Leslie North. As you can tell by the title, you can pretty much assume what this book is about because it is just right there on the title. It doesn't make you wonder what this is about. It just bam. I actually kind of remember a decent amount with this book, which is pretty interesting actually. That's pretty impressive considering it didn't really mean much to me. But I know that there's a rancher and he ends up meeting this woman. I want to say that she might have been pregnant before they met. I think that the fake fiance wasn't really pregnant with his kid. I think it's someone else's. And so they fake date for some reason that I don't recall. And it was just very blasé. It was kind of boring. And like the title literally says the entire plot. So that is pretty much the plot. Like you don't even have to read the book. You just have to read the title of the book and that pretty much tells you the plot of the whole thing. This was a random book I picked up. I don't even know. I think it was like free. Sometimes Kindle gives free books and I think this was a free book. That's why I picked it up. And I don't... Yeah, I shouldn't have. I probably shouldn't have. Next book is Wicked Fox. This is the first book in the Gumio series and this is by Kat Cho. I wanted to love this book so much. I really, really did. This book has a 3.75 average rating and I can understand that. I would love to read more about Korean mythology. I'm trying to currently study Korean. I'm not very good at studying languages. I am horrible at it, but I wanted to really read something with Korean mythology in it. And unfortunately, this wasn't something I was really interested in. I just remember not really caring about anything, the characters, the romance. It was just kind of meh to me. A lot of these books kind of are like that, where I just don't really care about a lot of the things, so I don't want to continue it. It just felt too young for me, which is, I mean, it's a young adult book, so fair enough. Like it's obviously not in my demographic anyway, but I just didn't really love it. I know a lot of people that did love it and I'm really jealous because I would love it. And the second cover is one of the most gorgeous covers I've ever seen in my life. So like I'm just sad about the fact that I didn't enjoy it, but I did try it and it wasn't really for me. I wouldn't say it was horrible, it just wasn't something that I really liked. This is probably my least amount of ratings in total on a book I've ever had, and as 116 ratings. This was also an ARC on NetGalley, and that is Max and the Spice Thieves by John Paragon. I got 40% of the way into this. This was kind of cute. This was a middle grade. It's a boy, and I remember he goes on a ship and he travels to another area and location. Like I said, this is very vague in my brain because my brain is not very good at memory, and I actually kind of liked some aspects of it, but I just remember reading it and just not really caring. I think there's a lot of cooking involved in this book. I also love to cook, so I really like the aspect of the cooking and like all the spices and like the smells, and the author was really good at writing that, but I just didn't really care about anything else. And like I said, this is a middle grade, so I probably should have known not to get a middle grade arc, and I think from now on I will definitely not pick up any middle grade arcs because I don't want to pick something up I don't think I'll like, because these poor authors don't deserve me reading their books and then just like not liking them. Like, oh boy, this book. So next is Thoughtless, which is the first book in the Thoughtless series, and this is by C.S. Steffens. It's a new adult romance, and it has a lot of ratings actually. It has 138,000 ratings and it has a 4.09. This is from 2011. This book actually has stuck with me quite well. I get this a 1.5 out of 5. So there's a woman who moves into a like new apartment or condo or somewhere that she rents, and she ends up moving in with a guy. So it's like a roommate situation. She already has a boyfriend back home, but he is traveling for I think work or education or work, I'm not really 100% sure, but he goes and he does that. And so while she's living in this new place, I think she's supposed to have another roommate. So there's supposed to be 3 of them, but I think one of them just never shows up, like they're always out. So she has a roommate with this very attractive guy, and he is a band member from a band that is in a nearby, like they perform at this bar or area nearby, and she goes and watches them and stuff, and then a romance happens. But the thing is, her original boyfriend that she does cheat on throughout this book, he is a really good guy. And of course at the end of the book they had to make him look like a bad guy, but he was like the sweetest person in the world, and she just did not care. She was rude to him. She was mad that he had to stay a bit longer, and like she was not understanding at all of it. I was in a long distance relationship for 7.5 years. So my boyfriend and I were 7.5 years apart, and it was horrible. We had like 6+ months not seeing each other, and we live together currently. This is my new apartment. I moved in December, so we finally are together now, but she would be upset that they had to wait like a few more months to see each other again, and she pretty much just blamed him for a lot of the things that happened. And yeah, like at the very end of the book, I forgot what happened, but it was not justified, because like I don't care what he does, cheating up until that point does not make it okay just because he does like one bad thing at the end. I didn't like the cheating. I didn't like the fact that she is so rude to him. I didn't like her as a character. Like I said, there were aspects I enjoyed. It was very like fan fiction-y, and that's not a bad thing because I used to read fan fiction, but it was just no. It was no. Also, the roommate or the new love interest, he had a friend in the band that would like assault the other girls, especially the main protagonist, and he would just think it's funny. Like he would like spank her and like say really gross comments, and they would just laugh it off because, like, you know, it's guys, they do that. No. I feel like a lot of people would have fun with this book. I would see people liking it, but I don't know, it's something I would read and then just talk about in a video. If I reread this book, I would 100% do a video on it because it's just so much. Like, there are good parts to it. I remember like some smut scenes, they're not like super detailed, it's like new adult, but still, like, there were aspects I enjoyed, but it was a 1.5 because there's 4 books in this whole series, and this first book is chunky, like really big. These books are huge. I would reread this and do a video. I'm considering it now, but we're gonna move on. I've been talking about this one for too long. Next is American Prince by Sarah Simone. This was the second book in the new Camelot trilogy. I DNF'd this at 47%. I did kind of like the book. This is a female protagonist with the president and the vice president, so there is 2 males and 1 female. There are a lot of parts I did like about it. I love Sarah Simone's writing. I love her smut scenes. I really liked the Forgettable series until a certain point, then I stopped reading it. But other than that, yeah, I stopped after this book. I don't know what it was. Like, there were just scenes that I did not jive with, I guess you could say. Like, weird things happened. I mean, it does start weird. Like, the first book starts odd. Like, she is underage in America, but she's not underage in the UK when they meet. I think she's like 16 or something. It's just interesting, okay? It's just interesting. Like I said, I liked a lot of the aspects of it, but like, will I go back to it? Maybe. I just really like Sarah Simone's stuff, but gosh, she has a lot of taboo subjects in her books, a lot of BDSM, and like the BDSM is not taboo, but like she has taboo aspects, topics I don't want to say because it might spoil some of her books, but it's just not right. It's just not right. So I don't know. I might go back to it. I doubt it. I will go back to Forgettable, but I don't know about the series. I don't know. The next one kind of hurts, and that is Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the 5th book in the Murderbot Diaries, and this is a very popular sci-fi series. I DNF'd this at 41% and has a 4.46 rating. So this is a very popular series. I mean, considering the rating, yes, it is, but I don't really like it that much, unfortunately. I love like fantasy books with a lot of plot. I love character building and I love characters in books, but this didn't have enough plot in it for me. It didn't have a lot of intrigue for me personally. Like, this is a very popular series and I love Murderbot to death, but other than that, other than Murderbot, I just didn't really have a reason to continue. I was pushing myself through these books just because I was like, oh, they're popular and they're short, so it's easy to get through, but I just was not a fan. Next is Deviate by J. Kristoff. This is the 2nd book in Lifelike, which I thought I would like. Lifelike. I DNF'd this at 52% and I just didn't really care for it that much. I think it was a bit too young for me, and I liked a lot of the twists and the turns, but I just got to a point where I just didn't think I cared anymore, which is very unfortunate, but I just didn't really care for these books. Like, it's really, really interesting. I think that a lot of younger people would really like this as a sci-fi book, but for me, I didn't really think. I think it was just too young for me personally. But there's a lot of cool aspects to it. Like, there's such cool parts, but I was like, I feel like I should care more, and I didn't. So I decided to stop reading the series. Next is All Rights Reserved. This is by Gregory Scott Katsolis, and this book is a really cool concept. Now, I feel like no one really talks about this book. It has a 3.67 rating, so maybe that's why. It has a really interesting concept. So essentially, in this world, words are monetized, kind of. If you want to say certain words, they have different amounts of currency behind it. So if you say a certain word, it might cost a certain amount of money. There's a bracelet that they wear that hears them and charges them. So there are people that are lower income that don't have as much money and they can't say a lot of words, or certain words are too expensive for them to say, and if they say it, then they're pretty much screwed because they can't afford it. And there's a character who's the main protagonist who decides to not speak, and it kind of starts a rebellion, and a lot of people are against her because of it, and then a lot of the poorer people decide to join her. And it's a really cool concept, but it just wasn't done amazingly in my opinion. The main protagonist doesn't speak, which could be cool, but it makes it kind of boring. The character just doesn't talk, so it's like the entire time you're following a character that doesn't speak, and you're just kind of just seeing her point of view, just listening to everyone, which makes it kind of just, it just felt, I feel like it could have been executed really well, but it just wasn't, unfortunately, and that's why I didn't have this book. But like I said, it was such a cool concept, but I just didn't like it. Oh boy, here we go. The next is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I DNF'd this in 2019. This has a 4.3 rating. This is a very beloved book, but I did not enjoy it. I found myself just confused. I didn't love the writing style. I don't really like whimsical kind of books, and I felt like this book was kind of like that. have come to the conclusion that I don't like these kind of things. I liked Caraval, which is surprising. I liked that, but I didn't like this. I just think that this one, I could not get into it. I think a lot of these books are like that at this point, but I could not get into it. It was just not for me. I didn't love the writing. I didn't like really much anything, unfortunately. Maybe if I reread it, I would like it, but I don't think I'm ever going to reread it. It's just not my type of writing style. Unfortunately, I'm just not into whimsical books, and you'll see that soon in another book I show. Next is Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks. This is the third and final book in the Montague siblings, and this is by Mackenzie Lee. I DNF'd this at 34%. I like the concept of it. It is the third book and it follows the brother of the first two characters, but this was like years after the last book was released. I just forgot everything. I just didn't really care about the characters anymore or the plot anymore. I liked the main characters' struggle with anxiety. It was very relatable to me. It was a bit more severe than my own case, but the main character did have anxiety, and it was constantly discussed, and it was really interesting and kind of a relief to see a character like that. But I just didn't care about anything anymore at this point. Like, it was just too long in between books, and I wasn't gonna reread them anymore. So I just decided, you know what, that was pretty good by itself. The first book was my favorite. Second book was fine, and then this one I just didn't really care about the characters anymore. So I just decided to just stop and just say, you know, after the first two books, I am good here. But I don't remember anything about this book. This is Rookie Move, which is the first book in the Brooklyn Bruisers. This is by Serena Bowen, and I've DNF'd at 72%. I don't even remember this book. In my review, all I say is that I was close to finishing it, but I found myself so bored that I couldn't keep trying to push myself to continue. It wasn't the most enthralling, and honestly, I didn't care for either of the love interests in this. I enjoyed the hockey aspect more than anything since I used to watch it as a teenager. Otherwise, meh, not horrible, but not for me. I don't remember anything. So I have nothing to say about this book. I don't even know anything about this book. So that's that. Next is a book I actually physically own. That is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. This was a book that I DNF'd recently. I got to 88% and I still DNF'd it. I started tabbing it, just didn't care anymore. For this, I didn't care about the romance, which is pretty much the biggest aspect of this book, and I did not like the male love interest at all. So this, I am just so surprised I didn't like. It has everything I should like, but no, unfortunately, it wasn't up to par for me. I got so close to the end though, which makes it so painful, but if I push myself through books, I can put myself in a reading slump, so I just decided to spare myself and just DNF it. All right, we're almost done. We're on the fourth last book, and that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This has an average rating of 4.05. I got to 65% of this book. Yeah, I just remember like it was about this girl that was sent to this tower as like an offering to someone, and it ended up being like this guy. Of course, there was some romance with it, but after that point, it just got really weird. They went to like the village, and then like a bunch of stuff happened, and I was just like, what is going on at that point? I just didn't like the way it went after the first third of the book, so I don't think I'll ever read from Naomi Novik. There's things that happened, not huge, but I'm just like, you know, I think I'm just gonna stick away from it. I'm not really interested in the books anyway, but yeah, I tried. At least I tried. This one also kind of pains me, and that is Night of the Dragon, which is the third book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy, and that by Julie Kagawa. I got 46% in this book, and this is the third and final book in the trilogy, and I have the first book in the Owl Crate edition. There's a lot of Japanese lore, and a lot of things were really interesting to me. I got to the third book, so I was liking it, but it felt very episodic in the way it was written, and I just didn't love it. There was just like them going to different things and different things happening, and it didn't really feel cohesive sometimes. I didn't really love a lot of it. I mean, there were cool aspects. I did like it to some extent. Like, I got to the third book, but I just didn't really care for it. I got to the third one and I was just pushing myself through it. Decided, you know what, it's not worth it. Then I looked up reviews on it, and I'm kind of glad I did DNF it, because something that happens at the end of the third book that would have really hurt me. So yeah, I'm not gonna say what, because that's a huge spoiler, but just I'm kind of happy I stopped when I did, to say the least. My second last book is Witch's Reign. This is the first book in the Desert Curse series by Shannon Mayer. This I DNF'd at 34%, and this is the weirdest book I've ever read in my entire freaking life. Every single like page is like cursing, people just cursing to each other. There's like weird like like vulgar things. Like, this book is so vulgar for no reason. It's the strangest book I've ever read. I think it starts off with a character like on horseback going through this like ravine, like it's like a desert with like cliffs alongside her, and there's like this giant running after her, and they just like mention something of the giant like swaying as he ran, and I was like, oh, okay. And then like it just continued getting weirder, and I looked at the cover and I was like, oh, like little dragons and like witches, and I was like, this seems so interesting. while I was reading it, it felt like I was high. And I've never been high before. So that's something. Oh my gosh. So 10,000 ratings and a 4.11 rating. I think the people that read this book just like that kind of stuff, I guess. Really like the vulgarness of it. Interesting. Also, the little tiny dragon on her shoulder I didn't even like, which is unfortunate because I love dragons and I wanted to read it pretty much for the dragons. And it was like this talking dragon that I don't really like dragons that can talk. It takes away like the coolness of it for me, I guess. Weirdest book personally I've ever read. I mean, I've read weird books, but this one just takes the cake, I guess. And the last book finally on this list is Strange the Dreamer, which is the first book in the duology of Strange the Dreamer. This is by Laini Taylor. I DNF'd this at 88%, and this is probably one of my most unpopular opinions personally. I really tried pushing through this, but the writing style, again, not for me. Whimsical writing is just something that I'm not interested in. I didn't know at the time since I never really read one like this before, but I tried so hard to get through it. It is about a character, I'm pretty sure he like loves books, and he gets sent into this other world or something like that. There is a romance, and I don't like the romance at all. It was too quick for me. I mean, it is a duology, so it's hard to kind of go slow. It just felt so sudden and like it was just so strong so fast. The writing, it was just the writing for me. Some people love the writing, the whimsical, magical writing, and I just did not really like it. I also remember when I was reading this book has like a lot of moths integrated into it. And I remember when I was reading this book, there was moths in my room, like the tiny moths. Eventually they ended up like staying in my house for so long that I had to just murder them all. I'm gonna stay away from Laini Taylor's books because her writing is not for me. I tried Daughter of Smoke and Bone, also didn't really love it. I liked it a little bit more, but it was not for me as well. There were cool aspects to it, but just overall not a huge fan of it. So I think Laini Taylor is just the author that I'm not going to read from, and not because I don't think her writing is good, it's just the style of it is definitely not something I would like or would like to read in the future. Those are all the 20 books that I have on my list. Like I said, I have 54 series that I have DNF'd. These are some of the series, but I have 54 in total. So yeah, that's a lot. I try not to DNF books if I don't have to, but I will if I feel like it's necessary. Let me know if you DNF'd any of these books or if you ever heard of any of these books. I have a lot of weird ones on this list. Do you DNF books, and how often do you DNF books? How many have you DNF'd, if you know? Hopefully I won't have that many more DNFs for the rest of this year. I'm pretty good at not doing it, but we'll see. Thank you again for watching my videos. Appreciate you all. Have a good reading month and stay cool, stay healthy, take care of yourself, and I will see you hopefully soon. Goodbye everyone.